It begins not with a tree, and not with a man nailed to it, but with a symbol older than history: the cross. Before Golgotha, before the empire, before the crucifixion became doctrine, there was a shape, a simple intersection, two lines, one rising, one reaching, vertical and horizontal, joined at the center. But this was never just geometry. It was memory, an ancient imprint, a map, a secret held in plain sight. You've seen it countless times, worn around necks, etched into stone, hidden in architecture, flags, roads, bones. You've passed it in dreams without knowing you walked across a doorway. Because that's what the cross was: not a symbol of death, but a symbol of convergence. It marked a place where things met, above and below, inner and outer, spirit and flesh, heaven and earth. Not just meeting, but merging. This is what has been forgotten. We remember the pain, we remember the story, but we forget the symbol beneath the story, the deep pulse it carries through all of time. The cross existed long before the man who hung upon it. In ancient Sumer, the gods carried crosses upon their chests. In Egypt, the Anka cross with a looped top was the key of life. Among the Norse, it was the hammer and the world tree. To the Maya, it was the axis of creation. Even the medicine wheel, the four directions, the crosshairs of a compass, they all echo the same geometry. And in every case, the message is the same. There is a center, a still point, where all forces meet, where time and space dissolve into one breath, one now, one presence. And the cross marks that place. It is not just a symbol, it is a map, and maps don't tell you what to believe, they show you where you are. The ancient mystics knew this. They saw the cross not as punishment, but as portal, not as torture, but as transformation. A symbol so deep, so embedded in the structure of being, that it appears again and again across cultures, centuries, civilizations. Not copied, remembered. Because truth leaves echoes, and the cross is one of them. Not owned by any religion, not bound to one story, but moving through them all like a thread that sews the visible and the invisible together. And so the question is not, why did he die on a cross? But rather, what does the cross mean that the world placed its myth upon it? Why that shape? Why that form? Why, of all things, was this the place of sacrifice and return? Because in every mystery school, in every esoteric tradition, the cross marks the place where opposites reconcile. The fire and the water, the sky and the ground, the soul and the skin. The cross is where the path of descent meets the path of ascent. It is where you fall into matter and begin the climb back into light. It is the moment of remembering. And whether carved into stone, drawn in vision, or seen in the shape of your own body when arms open wide, the cross has always been speaking. Not in words, but in directions, in silence, in geometry. Pointing not to a place of death, but to the exact point where life and eternity intersect. Two lines. One reaches upward, one reaches outward. At their intersection, a point of stillness. Not a structure, not an object, but a relationship. The vertical line is the axis of spirit. It rises from the depths of the unconscious and stretches into the unknowable above. It is ascension, intuition, the path of light returning to source. The horizontal line is the axis of matter. It extends left and right, past and future. through the body, through the senses, through time. It is experience, it is duality, it is the unfolding of life moment by moment. Where they meet is you, this moment, this breath. The cross is not only a map between worlds, it is a diagram of being. In every spiritual tradition, this dual structure appears, not as dogma, as architecture. In Hinduism, the Sushumna rising through the chakras vertical and the nadis spiraling across horizontal. In Kabbalah, the tree of life vertical Sephiroth interconnected with paths horizontal. In the body, the spine, upright and the arms outstretched. Man becomes the cross when he opens himself. This is not metaphor, this is design. Because the human being was not made only to live, but to bridge, to anchor what is above into what is here. That is why the vertical line matters. It is not just spiritual, it is the memory of origin, the thread that connects you to what cannot be seen, only felt. It is the timeless, the eternal. But eternity means nothing if it cannot enter time. And that is the horizontal, the walk, the body, the story. So the cross becomes the union, one axis that remembers, one axis that experiences. Together awareness. But most forget the vertical. They live only horizontally. They move from day to day, task to task, without ever looking up or down. Trapped in linear time, they forget their depth. And so the cross, once sacred, becomes flattened, reduced to an icon, a pendant, a monument, but not lived. Yet to live the cross is to live centered, to walk the world fully present, knowing you stretch far beyond it, to meet the ordinary as the doorway to the infinite. That is the real symbol. That is the hidden teaching. Not suffering, not guilt, but alignment. When you remember the vertical within you, you remember your height, your root in the earth, your reach into the divine. And when you live horizontally without forgetting the center, your life becomes luminous. You do not escape the world, you illuminate it. That is what the ancient ones knew. The cross was never meant to be bowed before. It was meant to be embodied. Because only at the center can you begin to see clearly where you are, what you are, and how this life, this body, this moment is the precise intersection of time and eternity. Stand at the center of the cross. Close your eyes. Stretch your arms wide, feel the pull. Forward and backward, left and right, upward and downward. This is not a symbol, it's a map. And every direction leads to a world. Ancient traditions knew this long before the cross became wood and nails. They mapped the cosmos not with telescopes, but with stillness, by reading the winds, the stars, the movements of animals, the silences in the earth. They knew that space wasn't empty. It had memory. It had weight. It had meaning. In the medicine wheels of indigenous America, each direction held a force. East, the rising sun, new beginnings, vision. South, fire, passion, youth, transformation. West, water, introspection, death, mystery. North, wisdom, cold, ancestors, clarity. The cross, then, was a compass, a sacred orientation of the soul. To walk east was to awaken. To walk south was to burn. To walk west was to descend. To walk north was to remember. And always at the center was the self. But it doesn't end there. The four directions echoed another structure, the four elements: earth, air, fire, water, each one a quadrant of experience, each one a gate to a different world. Earth, form, body, grounding, air, thought, voice, mind, fire, energy, will, transformation, water, emotion, memory, depth. The cross was a key to all of them, not to control but to navigate. Because reality is layered, and each axis of the cross pointed to a plane of consciousness. Some called them the four worlds. Asterisk, the physical, what you touch. Asterisk, the astral, what you feel. Asterisk, the mental, what you think. Asterisk, the spiritual, what you are. In esoteric Kabbalah, these were known as asterisk Asaya, the world of action. Asterisk Yetzirah, the world of formation. Asterisk Bariah, the world of creation. Asterisk Atziluth, the world of emanation. And what sits at the crossroads of them all? Consciousness. You. The cross wasn't just a shape, it was a vehicle, a stabilizing force in a spinning cosmos. It allowed you to orient your soul no matter where you stood. It told you, you are not lost. The winds may shift, the fires may rise, the waters may drown your name, but the center holds. Because when you know the directions, you no longer drift, you walk. Every step becomes ritual, every breath navigation, every life part of a pattern that spans across dimensions. The cross, then, is not only sacred because of its suffering, it is sacred because of its symmetry. It reflects the structure of the universe, and in its stillness, you find a place to stand between the worlds. Long before Rome, long before crucifixion, long before doctrine turned symbol into dogma, the cross already lived. Not as an instrument of punishment, but as a key, a code, a universal language of convergence. It whispered through stone, through sky, through bloodlines that carried memory like fire. Across the ancient world, the cross appeared again and again as if drawn from the same hidden source. In Egypt, it was the Ankh, a cross with a loop at the top called the Key of Life, held in the hands of gods, offered to the mouths of kings. It was not a tool of death, but a symbol of eternal breath. Life moving through form, spirit entering matter, immortality through alignment. The Ankh was worn, carried, invoked. It marked the meeting of opposites, male and female, sky and earth, time and the timeless. It was the cross as portal. In Sumer, there were the crosses of the gods etched into tablets, seals, and sacred garments. They bore it like a badge, not of power over others, but of access to realms beyond. In India, the swastika, originally a cross in rotation, symbolized the sun, the four directions, and the eternal movement of time. It turned inward and outward, a spinning wheel of fate and return. The cross here was not static. It moved, like breath, like cycles. Among the Celts, the solar cross adorned standing stones, a circle and a cross combined, not just to divide, but to unify. The sun, the year, the directions, the elements, all converging in sacred geometry. In the Norse tradition, there was Yggdrasil, the world tree. Its branches reached upward to the gods. Its roots dug deep into shadow. Its trunk was the spine of existence. While not drawn as a cross, its structure was a cross, a vertical axis binding the realms, pierced by horizontal branches of fate. Even in the Americas, long before contact, the cross appeared in stone carvings and sky maps. The Maya, the Aztec, the Inca all aligned their temples and pyramids to the fourfold geometry of the cosmos. The cross was their clock, their calendar, their altar. always the same shape, always the same message. There is a center, there is a map, and the human stands at its heart. So how did all these cultures separated by oceans, by centuries, by language, create the same symbol? How did they all remember it? Because the cross was not passed from one to the other. It emerged from within, from the structure of being itself. It was encoded in the body, the spine, the breath, the posture of surrender. It was encoded in the sky, the crossing of solstices and equinoxes, the movements of stars, the balance of light and dark. It was encoded in the earth in crossroads, rivers, ley lines, in the magnetic flow of place and presence. And so the cross was never invented, it was discovered, again and again, by those who listened. And perhaps that's why its meaning has been buried. Because something that appears in all traditions, something that powerful, can't be allowed to remain pure. It must be tamed, weaponized, turned into a symbol of conquest rather than connection. And so the original cross, the cosmic cross, was forgotten, hidden behind suffering, nailed to theology, hung over altars but never entered. Yet still, it waits, in old stones, in ancient dreams, in the body's silent geometry. A symbol not of belief, but of return, of realignment. The cross was never made for empire. It was made for awakening. They say it was a punishment. They say it was justice. They say it was history. But the truth is older than the wood, older than the empire that raised the beams, older even than the man they nailed to it. Because what happened that day on the hill, what has been retold 1,000 times in books, sermons, rituals, and tears, was more than an execution. It was a convergence. The vertical and the horizontal, flesh and spirit, man and God, above and below, all met in one place. And that place was a cross. We've been told it was suffering, but suffering alone does not become symbol. Pain does not become sacred unless something greater is hidden within it. So what was it that transformed that moment? What made the cross burn itself into the memory of the world? It was the pattern, the alignment. A being stretched across time and space, arms wide like the horizon, spine upright like a pillar of fire. The body became geometry. The geometry became gateway. In that moment, he wasn't simply dying. He was embodying a mystery that had always existed. The cross had always been a symbol, but now it had a pulse, a breath, a heart. He became the symbol. Not to glorify death, but to illuminate transformation. Because in every mystical tradition, to pass through death is to awaken, to break the illusion of form, to unbind the soul from story. And what better shape to carry this revelation than the one that joins opposites? Heaven and earth, divinity and dust. The cross was not chosen by accident. It was chosen by archetype. Even if those who wielded the hammer thought they were executing a man, something deeper was happening beneath their actions. They were enacting a ritual, unconscious perhaps, but precise. The cross was not just wood, it was an axis, a throne, an altar. The vertical beam reached from the underworld to the sky. The horizontal stretched through time, connecting past and future in a single suspended now. And at the center, the heart, the still point. This is where transformation happens. This is where the veil thins. Because in many ancient traditions, the death of the god was never the end. It was initiation. Osiris torn apart and reborn, Dionysus dismembered and reassembled, Inanna descending, stripped of everything, and rising again. The story of the God who dies and returns it is not about punishment. It is about unlocking something hidden within us all. And the cross, in this moment, becomes the door, but not a door that opens outward. It opens inward. Because the crucifixion wasn't just historical, it was anatomical. Your spine is the vertical line. Your outstretched arms form the horizontal. Your heart is the center. The pattern was never meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be lived. To stand at the center of your own suffering, not as victim but as witness. To allow what is false to be pierced, so that what is real may emerge. The crucifixion wasn't the point. The convergence was. The moment when what is divine entered what is human completely. Not as myth, but as presence. And so, the man on the cross was not only dying, he was demonstrating, showing us what it means to surrender fully, to hold both light and dark, to stand at the center of all things and say, I am. That is the secret that remained, not just in his death, but in the shape he died upon. A shape older than theology, more honest than doctrine, a shape that appears whenever something sacred is about to happen. The cross, a cosmic compass, and he for a moment became its center. There is a tree that grows through all things. Its roots drink from the underworld. Its branches touch the edge of the unseen. Its trunk stands at the center of all becoming. It is called many names. The Norse knew it as Yggdrasil, the world tree, its limbs bridging the 9 realms. In ancient Persia, it was the Gaukarina tree, a source of immortality. In Mesoamerica, the Ceiba tree rose from the earth like a cosmic pillar. In Kabbalah, it became the tree of life, 10 spheres ascending and descending across 4 worlds. But beyond names and myths, this tree is not made of wood. It is made of direction, of stillness, of center. It is the axis mundi, the world axis, the vertical bridge between realms, the spine of the cosmos. And in that verticality, you may begin to recognize the shape again. It is the cross. But now it is more than a symbol. It is an invitation. Because you too have an axis, a vertical line that rises through your being from root to crown, from base to breath, from silence to song. Your spine mirrors the world tree. Your nervous system hums like the roots of Yggdrasil. Your awareness is the light at its top. And the horizontal? That is the world around you, the field of time, the space of action, the theater of becoming. But the vertical, that is where you descend to remember and ascend to transform. The cross, then, is not only a tool for ritual death, it is a stairway. Each step a shedding, each level a thinning of illusion. You do not climb it with muscle. You ascend by letting go. Letting go of false identity, of inherited beliefs, of the voice in your head that was taught to lie. Because the axis doesn't rise through thought, it rises through presence. Every ancient culture knew this. The shaman climbs the world tree in trance. The mystic ascends Jacob's ladder in vision. The initiate rises through the chakras in breath. Always upward, always inward. Because the worlds are not out there, they are within. The cross is a compass not only for geography, but for consciousness. It points not just north, south, east, west, but deep, deeper, deepest still. And at its heart, the moment of convergence, where the vertical pierces the horizontal, where timelessness meets time, where spirit enters form without losing its light. You have known this place, in silence, in awe, in those moments when the veil thins and the mind forgets itself. You've touched the axis, and for a breath, you remembered who you were before you were named. The cross, in this way, is not doctrine, it is design. A mnemonic device of the soul, a secret passed in plain geometry, a reminder that the way up is often the way through, that the map was always within your body, that the doorway was never locked, only forgotten. So what happens when you stand at the base of this axis and begin to climb? Not literally, but internally. What dies? Control, ego, separation. And what is born? Vision, integration, stillness. The axis doesn't demand that you leave the world. It teaches you to stand in it without being of it, to be rooted like a tree and still rising like a flame. This is the stairway the mystics found in caves. This is the ladder Jacob saw in his sleep. This is the cross that opens, not kills. The true crucifixion is not of the body, it is the breaking of illusion. And at the center of that break is the space between the beats, the pause between the thoughts, the breath between this world and the next. So next time you see a cross, ask not who died there, but what it was meant to reveal. It is a signpost, a structure, a stairway, and it waits for those who dare to climb inward. It follows you, not loudly, not forcefully, but quietly, like a shadow stitched into the world itself. The cross, not just in churches, not just in scripture, but in architecture, in street grids, in dreamscapes, and in the subtle geometry of your thoughts. It's there, beneath meaning, speaking in a language older than language. Because the cross was never only a symbol, it was a pattern, a structure, an echo of something fundamental, woven into the very code of how reality organizes itself. And like all archetypes, it slips into your unconscious, emerging when the waking mind begins to dissolve. You see it in dreams, not always clearly, but unmistakably. A doorway split in four, a window with bars that intersect, a road crossing beneath your feet, forcing you to choose, or sometimes a figure hanging in silence, arms outstretched across the void, not in agony, but in stillness. The cross appears here too, because the dream world remembers. While the waking world forgets, numbed by repetition, religion, rhetoric, the subconscious speaks symbolically, and in its language, the cross is primal. Jung saw this. He knew the cross wasn't just Christian, it was archetypal. It represented the intersection of opposites, the psyche's yearning for balance, the unification of dual forces, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, ego and self. And what is a dream if not a place where these opposites meet? At night, the line between above and below thins. You descend, and in that descent, you often reach a center. And at the center, the cross appears, not to punish, but to orient. In the waking world, it hides more subtly. It is the crosswalk beneath your feet, the intersection where you hesitate before turning, the compass rose printed in an old atlas, the first aid symbol you instinctively trust, the plus sign in your quote atlas. Mathematics, the window pane splitting morning light into quadrants. Everywhere you go, the cross speaks. Even your body whispers it. 2 arms out, spine rising. You carry the pattern. And yet most don't see it. Because when something is everywhere, it becomes invisible. And so we stop asking, why is this shape so persistent? Why does it show up not just in symbols, but in the structure of our tools, our rituals, our movement. Because the cross is more than a shape, it is a lens. It is how we frame reality itself. Up and down, left and right, spirit and matter, time and timeless. It is how we find balance, how we know where we are, how we return to center. Artists have used it instinctively, the rule of thirds, the focal grid, the sacred geometry of proportion and placement. Cities are built upon it, grid patterns, cross-shaped layouts, cathedrals designed so that their very floor plans form a cross often over the place where energies converge. And esoterically, those convergences are no accident. Because in the old mystery schools, it was understood, form carries frequency. The cross was placed not just for symmetry, but for resonance. Where the lines meet, a charge occurs, an opening, a moment of stillness so profound that it becomes a doorway. And this is the cross's true power in symbols and dreams. It stops you. The eye pauses, the breath slows, the spirit listens, because you found the center. And at the center, you are no longer pulled, no longer divided, no longer in motion. You are still, and in stillness the veil thins. You see things you forgot how to see. The soul, the pattern, the quiet hand behind the veil. So the next time the cross appears in your dreams, don't interpret it, enter it. Stand at its center. Feel the pull of each direction. Ask what world is calling from each quadrant. Because the cross is not a wall. It is a compass, a structure of return, a memory you carry. And the dream doesn't show it to you as a warning. It shows you because it knows. You're ready to remember. They turned it into an object of worship. They raised it on altars. They wore it around their necks. They kissed it, feared it, bled for it. But the cross was never meant to be a symbol of control. It was a map, a guide, a doorway, a still point in the chaos of existence, showing you where you are and where the worlds intersect. It was never asking to be adored. It was asking to be entered. Because the cross is not a destination, it is orientation. Look again. The vertical line is spirit. The horizontal is matter. Where they meet you. Not metaphorically, literally. You are the meeting point between heaven and earth, between the eternal and the temporary, between the formless and the formed. The cross does not ask you to escape life. It shows you how to be in it without forgetting what you are. It is a key hidden in plain sight. Every axis, every arm, every intersection a clue. And when you place yourself within its structure, when you imagine your own body aligned with that sacred geometry, you do not just believe, you begin to feel. Feel the ground beneath you, earth. Feel the air as it moves through you, breath. Feel the pulse in your spine, life. Feel the stretch of your arms' openness. This is the ritual. The map is not written in words, it is embodied. Ancient mystics knew it. Initiates walked it with their steps. Shamans climbed it in their trance. And now you remember it through your form. The cross isn't just a symbol of death. It is the blueprint of becoming. Its very structure mirrors the journey of the soul. Asterisk, the descent from the formless into form. Asterisk, the navigation across time and polarity. Asterisk, the return to stillness, to presence, to center. Asterisk, the ascension back not upwards into some faraway heaven, but inward into the eternal now. That's why the map was never drawn on paper, it was lived. The cross appears wherever thresholds meet, in the heart of temples, in the layout of labyrinths, in the cardinal directions of medicine wheels, in the cruciform of sacred gardens, in the invisible structure of mandalas, always pointing to something hidden beneath the visible. Not a place, a state. The state of balance, of presence, of being both fully human and fully divine in the same breath. That is the mystery. The cross doesn't belong to a religion. It belongs to consciousness itself. And when you begin to walk through the world with that knowing, everything changes. Every doorway becomes an initiation. Every decision becomes a direction. Every experience becomes a quadrant of the whole. The map isn't linear. It doesn't show you a start or an end. It shows you the center. Because from the center, you can move in any direction with awareness. You become the compass, the axis, the place where the worlds touch. And so the question isn't, what happened on the cross? The real question is, what is trying to happen in me now? Where are my lines misaligned? Where have I forgotten the vertical? Where am I caught in the horizontal, lost in motion, disconnected from source? The cross offers no commandments, only structure, only pattern. It is not a demand, it is an invitation to step into alignment, to recognize the design, to return to the place where all things meet and dissolve into stillness. This is what they never told you. The cross was never a destination. It was never even an answer. It was always a map, and it points inward,